Yo, what is up, guys? Will here with Canyon with Fantasy Flock, and we are bringing you our 5 busts for the upcoming NBA fantasy season. These are busts relative to where we're seeing ADP at and where people's expectations are for these players. Not necessarily like all these guys are going to suck, but relative to what people are expecting from them heading into the season, we are lower on them, so we're labeling them as busts. First up, I've got Porzingis, KP, and I've got him as a bust for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's injury prone. Just want to put that out there. It's hard to label guys as injury prone, but Porzingis has just shown that year in and year out, he's going to miss significant games. And when you can count on that, it lowers people down a bit. And two, we didn't see KP play with Beal at all last season. So a huge usage guy stepping in. So I think the scoring might be the lowest we've seen from Porzingis. You know, in Dallas, playing alongside Luka, was able to put up decent numbers. But he's going to be playing with Kuzma, Beal, and I think we'll see the other Washington guys potentially score more. So I don't really like scoring for Porzingis this season. The rebounding should be fine, but he really is scoring and rebounding. Not a ton of assists. Defensive stats are okay, the blocks, but just in general, I think where people are expecting, I don't really see him being able to put up numbers, especially with where he's at ADP-wise.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, KP, obviously, like you said, very injury prone. His days in Dallas were very up and down. He had some great games, but pretty inconsistent. And, you know, for his size, a little underwhelming with how he plays in the interior and defensively. So it makes sense for me. Next up here, we've got Miles Turner, another guy who's a little injury prone with the Pacers still. He led the league in blocks per game last season, but only played 42 games and even only played 47 games in the season before that. So he's not going to play a full season most likely. Offers little upside in scoring and rebounding as a stretch 5. Always around 12.7 rebounds for like the past 5 years. He'll get you those blocks, but you know when it comes to minutes, you know he might be seeing less and less of them with Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson and Goga as well. Those young rotational bigs in Indiana might be seeing the court more. So the blocks really have to carry for Turner, and his ceiling for the other stats really isn't quite there. And again, blocks per game might be good, but it's only good if you can play every game of the season. So Turner and the Pacers have not been on the same page this season, so might not even be able to see him in a Pacers jersey by the end of the year. But overall, fading Turner. He's got the good block upside, I suppose, but points and rebounds for a stretch 5 that might see less and less minutes, just not enough of a ceiling.
Definitely. And next up, we've got DeJounte Murray. Huge breakout last season for the Spurs, but being traded to the Hawks, a situation I'm not super excited about for Murray. Obviously playing alongside Trey, and I think we've talked about it a little bit. I don't know how well these guys are going to play together. Both really good on-ball guards, and Murray's not a great three-point shooter. And that's really where you'd expect a guard to excel alongside Trey. I just think Trey's going to take a ton of usage. We're not going to see the scoring we saw last season. It's hard to anticipate him having the same assist numbers we saw last year as well, with just expecting Trey to just take a huge chunk of usage. So for me, even though he's a great rebounding guard, showed the ability to be a really good playmaker, I'm just expecting a downtick from what we saw last season. And I know he was amazing last season, so a downtick from that could still be great. But I think ADP-wise, there's just guys who I think have a lot more upside around where he's being drafted. Obviously, going to be a really good defensive stat guy, a really good defender. But I just think overall, you just plug in a guy next to Trae Young. It's just hard to expect them to be able to put up numbers when he was playing with Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell. It's just a different guy. So usage-wise, I'm just expecting a huge drop down from Murray. And I think he'll put up similar numbers he did in his 2020 season with the Spurs, where he was closer to 15 points, 7 boards, maybe 5, 6, 7 assists per game, which is a huge drop off from what we saw last year.
Yeah, incredible season last year. Honestly, one of my favorite players in the league. But, you know, as far as ADP goes and, you know, his new environment, it's going to have to be labeled a bust. Darius Garland, another guy next up here that I actually really like talent-wise. But with Mitchell entering Cleveland as well as the rotational guards becoming healthy there, Garland's just going to see a lot less usage. You know, when Sexton was healthy with Garland last season, Garland averaged 6 less points per game, 1 less assist and rebound per game as well. His ADP is currently higher than Chris Paul, Bradley Beal, Kawhi Leonard, and other really high usage stars. So with Donovan Mitchell there, I just think, again, kind of like Murray, he's just going to have to see a big downtick in usage. We won't be able to see the high-scoring, high-assist Garland that we've been able to see without Sexton and even the other backup guards. He's not going to dominate that area of the court anymore as much. So Mitchell probably will get a lot of usage there. I love Garland as a player, but a lot of downtick in usage is going to be coming this season.
Definitely, yeah. And it's definitely relative to kind of where he's going ADP wise. Maybe we'll see that kind of self-correct, getting closer to draft season when, the news of Mitchell being a Cav, but still, he's still pretty high too. And I mean, if Mitchell is going to see the same usage he saw in Utah, hard to expect that's not the case. It's just going to be hard for Garland to replicate what he did last season and definitely at the end when there were a ton of injuries to those Cavs guards. Last up here, we've got Karl-Anthony Towns, and this is definitely a pick where it's relative to ADP. I still think he's going to have a really good year, but the addition of Gobert is going to hurt his rebounding. You bring in a 5 like that. And 2, I think the Anthony Edwards breakout. I think we really are going to see that from a scoring aspect. I mean, Anthony Edwards could lead this team in scoring, would not surprise me. And obviously that would hurt Cat a little bit. Still should be a decent scoring big. I mean, he's still going to go early in drafts, but I think relative to the guys around him, right? So he's still going to be one of our top 5 centers. But compared to other guys, I just think that there's more hindrance and there's less upside with Cat relative to what he's done in previous seasons. So I'm not in love with taking him with a super early pick when there's other guys I feel really safe about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of the key to like most of these guys, right? So remember, these are busts, usually based on position, kind of based on their environment and their own rights as well. Talent-wise, we're not saying these guys are garbage. These guys are all really good. DeJounte Murray, Garland, Cat, all-stars. But yeah, Cat's, it's one of the tougher ones to get out there and say that he's kind of a bust because his ADP is really high, and Gobert comes in, Anthony Edwards breakout. So these factors are things you got to consider when you're going to, potentially use a first-round draft pick on someone. You got to think about these things before, maybe realize it too late.